Hey guys, sorry if the lighting's kind of dim, cause you know, in the cold the lights don't work all that great. They will once they warm up. But as you know, that Murray tractor I had that I made a stack for. Well, I don't know if I told you, but I want to build another racing mower, so started sanding it down. Just need to do a little more yet. I'm not gonna get all the paint off. It's really hard to do that, but I want to get most of this smoothed out, especially where there's rust here and stuff. And it's kind of pitted, and you can't really do much about that, but get that all cleaned up and repaint that. It took me only about 2 hours to tear down this whole thing, and I had a buddy who helped out too, so that's kind of reasonable. A lot of people would think, wow, only 2 hours, that's pretty good, but I also had a buddy, so altogether, if I did it myself, it would have taken me about 3, probably, he's kind of new to all this stuff, and I have a few buddies that are like that. I got a whole bunch of shit ton of buddies, and a lot of them they come down here because they're kind of into this stuff, but they never had any learning experience. So to me, they'll come down and here and know they really like to work on stuff, and I always have projects and they enjoy doing it. So but except for the fact that sometimes he'd be turning a bolt the wrong way and snap the head, but it's all part of learning, And I show him how to remove a broken bolt, but alright, so yeah, I was sanding it down. This is what I have here, my die grinder and wheel that's really unbalanced, so it vibrates a little bit, but hey, I don't care. After I'm done, my hand feels all numb. Guess that's bad for your hand, so I'll straighten that thing out then, but yeah. So this is a 1985 Murray Green Acres, and reason why it's an 85 is unless the motor switched, it was an 85 motor. So I tell. And this 86 motor, which is the same motor as that one there, this Briggs 10 is the one that's going to get put in. Briggs 11 horse. So got to sandblast the head out and stuff, and clean out the rest of the carbon in there. I tried getting that off with the wire wheel, but can't really get it all off. So I usually just sandblast them. Cylinder was all redone, resurfaced in there. As you can see, I put a little crosshatch inside there with just broke the glaze. That's the most key part with just some sandpaper or real fine grit. So actually, you want to start out with a fairly coarse grit. You don't want to use too coarse, but you should just feel it shouldn't be slippery. It should be smooth, but not slippery. If it feels kind of rough, you may have a little bit too much, and it'll over break in the rings, and you may have too little compression when you go to start it, and you may have a hard time getting it started, and then it'll over break in the rings. So you kind of want just a perfect tone, especially if you're using glaze breakers with the 2 arms, or the flex hones with the beads on them. You definitely, especially with the glaze breakers, you can adjust them out. So you want to start with more of a coarse, kind of polish out the scratches. Then you just turn it down a little bit, and that'll clean out the rest. But I relapped the valves and stuff. I already had them in since last time I did that, so there they are. And this engine's actually going to be straight pipe, so it's only going to have about a pipe that long just to come out there, and it's going to be a straight pipe, and then it's going to go in some funky shape, whatever. But no muffler, so point is to be as loud as hell. It's a flathead. Does it burn a valve? Well, I guess it can. It's really not as dramatic as people say it is. Like, yeah, you're going to burn your valve. And even if it does, well, then it's a little flathead. I'll pull this valve out and take me like a half an hour to resurface it, clean it up, and relap them. If I even need to do that, it's really not all too much. So give it a nice little blue flame coming out too. So but yeah, so this is going to be a racing motor. As I have it apart, here's one of my plans. I actually thought, this may sound crazy, but I was thinking on turbocharging. And I've seen a few people do it, and I think I'm capable of doing it. I just don't know if it's going to be worth it to me, because I'm going to have to first off buy a turbo. Second of all, who's to say that this turbo is going to even fit on it? What you need for a small Briggs like this is you need probably the smallest turbo you can get out of a car. And here's the only other issue. A lot of the turbos, if you actually know anything about cars really, instead of just lawn tractors, but turbochargers, they also have they also spin at extremely high RPMs. So, and what I mean is like these things, they'll they'll spool up to incredible speeds. So the bearings actually are cooled, and the whole turbo and the bearings are actually cooled by oil from the engine. So the only problem with this is this engine don't have an oil pump on it, so I couldn't tap out an oil system on there, and let alone the turbo to go through there. So I guess what you can do is tap it out in the bottom, and if the turbo is down below it, it would still run oil through it. But it all depends, you know. I'm not a turbo expert, you know, but I know how to hook them up. So, and what I basically do, you'd make a manifold and fit on there, and then it goes out inside the front rotor of the turbo, where turbine, whatever you call it, and it'll go inside there, and it'll spool up the turbo, and the rest is just the exhaust. So that's just kind of like the wastegate of the turbo or whatever. Then the next is the inner part, which actually takes the spooling up, and that's where it compresses it, and it compresses it up to a certain psi, like let's say for a small one, maybe just around 25, maybe not even, so less than that. For a Briggs, if you tried taking a normal sized turbo, the only amount of pressure you're going to get out of here is maybe you're going to spool it up to, and you're only going to be able to compress maybe, if you're lucky, 5 psi out of it. And then you just have it run into here, and then the exhaust comes out to there. Your turbo's hooked up. Do you need an intercooler? Well, no, you don't really need an intercooler, because the turbo is not going to be running that fast. So it's really, I guess in a way you could use an intercooler, but you really actually don't need it. But just have as long as you have a long tube coming back over to here. Now you'd also need a carburetor. A lot of people say you need fuel injection, but I've seen people fuel injected carburetor. Turbocharged carburetor engines already. So in a way, basically all you got to do is really just adjust this bottom jet out to make it run richer, because when you're putting forced air into an engine, it's going to require more fuel, because you're also increasing the compression ratio by a little bit for whatever your turbo's compressing at. You know, you're going to start out with 5 psi at the bottom. It's going to be much higher once it gets up to the top, so you're also creating a compression ratio. But then again, you know, this engine really doesn't need it. The only fact that the reason why we would do that is for the fact that to show off, which is what the tractor is going to be used for, and racing. But I could also risk damaging this engine if I do, but I have another block and stuff, so that's what I'm thinking of. They also make the electronic superchargers, which basically they're just a fan. They make them for cars, and it's supposed to add a few horsepower. It actually, look up Growda1 on YouTube. He actually tested one of those things, and those things, they absolutely suck. Like, from what he even said that, from even what my friends say, it actually just seems like it decreases power, because it gets in the way, and it just causes restriction. So, but for a lawnmower, that may work. And they make the really cheap ones for like $40, and then they make the ones for like $150 that actually put out a certain amount of boost. And I've seen those being tested, and those did a little something. On cars, I don't think they really made all too much of a difference. I don't think they made a difference at all, but I mean, at least it didn't get in the way, and maybe increase fuel economy a little bit, better idle. So, but whatever we need to do this, so that's really what matters. So, but I want to put some sort of forced air system on it. So turbo may be a little bit difficult. We could get it to work, but it's going to be expensive, and it's kind of a risk to be doing that. So I may just go with just a special, just a little electronic supercharger, and I could probably wire that up to the stator to increase RPMs when it's running. Then I just run it over to auxiliary when it's running on a 12-volt battery, which would probably help. Especially, that's another issue, since they're constantly blowing air at the same speed the whole time. They're not very work efficient. So anyways, that's all that I have for here. So thanks Thanks for watching, YouTube, and rate, comment, and subscribe.